TG Geeks, episode 125, July 10th, 2017. Vampire Spiders of the Multiverse? Hello and welcome to another webcast from tggeeks.com, where Ben and Keith, the Two Gay Geeks, talk about all aspects of geekdom and nerdery. Sci-fi, comics, film, horror genre, you name it, we talk about it. I'm Keith Lane, and we're coming to you from TG Squared Studios in lovely, warm Phoenix, Arizona.
And I'm Ben Raggington, also coming to you from it is so freaking hot that not even Satan would visit here.
Yes.
Phoenix, Arizona. I think hell is cooler.
Yeah, as Jeannie would say, it's hell's orientation.
Yeah.
And we have a really exciting interview for you this time, so we're going to get right to it. Well, that's not the interview music, but
No,
we'll
that's
use
for
it anyway, so here we go. And this time on the show, we have science fiction author extraordinaire, Mr. Zachry Wheeler. Welcome to the show, Zachry.
Thank you very much, although extraordinaire might be a stretch there.
I wouldn't, no, I would kind of go with that after what I've read today. Or
Yeah.
I've
I'll
read
take
this week, I should say.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, so you have written a couple of books. The one that we're kind of really going to want to talk about, but we can talk about the other one as well, is Transient, and that one has a little bit of interesting story behind it, in the sense that they're looking at it to do some development on a movie. So tell us about who you are and what Transient is, and kind of how you got started in writing and how you started writing this book, and then we'll talk about the movie development. Is that
Sure,
that was
happy
a
to.
mouthful.
Yeah,
Oh, my
wrote that
goodness,
all down. Okay, let me see. Okay, talk about this first and this first. Okay,
There
I
we
think
go.
I'm good.
All right, good.
Did you take
I
notes?
I got my list. I'm ready to go. No, Transient is the backstory to Transient especially is pretty. I find it interesting, but it's surprising to a lot of people. So Transient is, just to throw out a blurb for anyone curious, it's a post-apocalyptic deconstruction of vampire lore. Now, at a baseline, it's a survival tale about what it means to be human. And concurrently, it's also a socio-political, or it explores the socio-political ramifications of being immortal. It's an interweaved story that lives in the gray. It's not fantasy, it's not horror, it's sci-fi noir. Originally, So Transient, people are surprised to learn that Transient took 10 years to publish. When I
Not
first,
surprising.
oh my goodness, this has been a labor of love, to use a cliched term, but when I wrote the first draft of this story, it was awful. I wasn't a writer, I was barely a reader at that point. I just had an interesting idea come up to me and I wrote it down. Now, the whole reason it even came about was one thing that really irritates me from a vampire perspective is that the stories tend to treat the lore as a secondary thing, where it's just kind of explained away as mysticism, or
Right.
doesn't really give a whole lot of insight. Well, whenever you're dealing with like horror and science fiction and that kind of stuff, you really want to know the nitty-gritty, the details. So I just got to this point where I got fed up with vampires, whenever they're not treated as a classic monster, explained away as just some cheesy mystical nonsense. So I got to the point where I asked myself, what if vampires were real?
Right.
And not real as in, hey, look at that vampire over there, all, shrouded in mystery. I mean, like, scientifically feasible. Now, this has been tackled a couple of times before, but I really wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of it. And before long, I had a pseudo research paper full of the full of all the different methodologies and biological necessities and all that stuff. I basically got rid of all the stuff that didn't make sense and kept all the things that did, and then started to explain the backstory. Now, from this pseudo paper, a story emerged, and unfortunately, that story was awful because I wasn't a writer. I didn't know how to write. I was just now it read pretty good as like a scientific research paper on the biological necessities of being a vampire, but there was no story, there was no pace, there was no structure, there was nothing. It was just a bad story. So I set it aside, just thinking I sucked at writing. Of course, I needed that feedback, and I got it. I was just not really that good. So I went to other things. Now, several years later, I'm writing different things. I started, I like to credit craft beer for teaching me how to write.
I see.
And I'm entirely serious about that. It's like people they're amused to learn this, but I started a craft beer review site called brewchief.com, specifically because I didn't like the way the mainstays were doing it, like Beer Advocate, Rate Beer. There was a twinge of objectivism to a fault, where everything just gets kind of picked apart and no one actually talks about, hey, did you actually like it?
Right.
Stuff like that.
Too much.
I can love this beer, but I'm going to pick the heck out of it.
Well, too many analytics.
Yeah, exactly. So I realized that there wasn't a site out there that kind of captured the subjective side of it. It's like, yeah, we can deconstruct this from a analytical level and say, hey, this is interesting, this is good, this is quality, this is like an 8 out of 10, blah blah blah. I understand that. I understand the drive to want to do that, but I like to talk about how I found it. What's the context? Was I in, how did this experience come about? So I set out to create a competitor site for that experience, and I just started writing and just started churning out articles left and right. And after a couple of years, it just kind of dawned on me that, oh, I'm actually getting kind of good at this writing thing.
Right.
I'm getting a better grasp of the language. I'm starting to select different words based on how they flow or based on how they roll off the sentence, or all that kind of stuff. And I didn't realize I was doing this, but I decided, I had that novel that I wrote, years ago. Let's go see if I can, see how I've improved. And holy crap, was it bad?
Yeah.
But at that point, I had finally reached a point where I knew how to fix it.
Right.
I had enough a grasp of writing at that point that I could improve the manuscript. So it just became a side project. I kept rewriting it and editing it and rewriting it some more. I rewrote the novel stem to stern probably 5 times.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I put it through more rounds of editing than I care to admit. And
the more you write, the better you get. So.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's the old adage: how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. But I had zero intentions of publishing it. It was just something interesting to do. I liked delving into the editing process and finding better ways to tell a story or better ways to convey something. Learning the whole show don't tell thing, even though I have several info dumps in there that I needed. But it was just fun, and I started learning more about what makes a better writer, delving into the rabbit hole of, mistakes and polishing and tips and tricks and everything, and I enjoyed the process and got to the point, this is actually getting to the point where it might be publishable.
Right.
And with nothing to lose, I just started sending it to query agents, basically to see where I stood, or literary agents, and I started getting a lot of positive feedback, which blew my mind, because I didn't think I was, I would have been happy if I was competent. I didn't
right.
I didn't realize that it was actually decent. So that gave me a lot of confidence. But the only problem was I got the exact same feedback from everyone. It's just I like the story, I like the writing, but the quote unquote vampire genre is saturated,
Right.
which of course was when I was querying, and I completely agreed.
Right.
You know, coming off like the tail of Twilight movies and all that kind of stuff, no one just wanted to touch vampire. In fact, there were several times I was looking at query agent websites, and they actually would have a star down on their submission requirements say nothing about vampires.
Wow.
So I could totally understand that. But that got me, now that I had gotten to the point where I had a decent manuscript, I launched into Max and the Multiverse, my second book. And I had this idea churning for a while. And at this point, I actually had the knowledge to start from a better place. So
Right.
I could project out how I wanted it. I could concentrate on act structure and pacing and all that kind of stuff. And I just plowed through Max and the Multiverse. And I started, and after I got that one done and edited and ready and as close to publication as I could, I started querying that. And while that was stewing in query hell, which takes forever,
Right.
I decided, well, it would be nice to have something to promote while Max is out there churning in no man's land. And that became the all-driving reason to publish Transient.
And
I published it as an afterthought.
Yeah,
I had no idea it would actually gain a following.
So this was
as it has.
self-published, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
You're self-publishing, is that correct?
Yes, self-publishing.
Okay. Yep.
And that was also a strategic decision. I can talk about that if you would like.
It's just we have a number of friends that have done self-publishing as well as the big publishing houses and whatnot. So, yeah, we understand that, and I think that is where people are going now to be, instead of being bound to that publisher, we have we have somebody that we know very well who is with a publisher, and she can never get on the bestseller list because they won't promote her that way.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
even though
I mean,
her following is incredible, so you can do what you want when you self-publish.
Exactly. There are big name authors that are leaving their publication houses to self-publish at this point because it's so much more control. You have all the creative control over the process. You're not beholden to a lot of. I mean, now there are certain advantages to being traditionally published, but those advantages are slowly being whittled away by self-publishing, especially now that it has gained a credibility.
Exactly.
People understand that there are going to be bad books out there, subpar writers, because it is a free-for-all. But we're now to a point where the good stuff is rising to the top. That is giving it an air of credibility, which is really nice. One of the examples I give is I was fortunate enough to establish a connection with Andy Weir, author of The Martian, and that's a long, fun story, but we worked on a project together. And one thing that he had said that really resonated with me, and this was when I was still flopping back and forth between publish, not publish, go traditional, keep querying, blah, 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 is he said, if you have a good story and you can get legs with that story, you gain all of the leverage because everyone comes to you.
Right.
It's no longer a please read my thing. It's which representation do I choose if I even want representation? Because a lot of people don't know that the Martian was originally self-published.
Wow.
And it's that's an extreme story because Andy is that book exploded like no other.
Right.
So, but it rings true. It's like if you have a good story, it can rise to the a decent level in the self-publishing community. You can gain a ton of advantages.
Right. So I really enjoyed Transient. I had, of course, I said I picked up like 10 books from Phoenix Comic-Con, and 2 of them were yours, and I had just finished one book, and I got into the first part, and the first page was, it was so totally different from what I had just read that it was a little difficult to get into, but after that it was like, oh my gosh, this is really interesting. And I like the way you just launch us into this world. I mean, it literally launch us in. And and then you start slowly giving us the little info dumps and then the big info dumps and then all of the things. It was really a fascinating story. I really enjoyed it tremendously.
I will confess, and this might shed some light on the wonky structure of Transient, is whenever I was trying to polish the story and try and disseminate the information, because it did need a good chunk of world building, and holy crap, did I slay a lot of my darlings with this. I had so many just info vomits that didn't move the story forward.
Right.
I thought they were interesting, but they just didn't do anything. They just sat there like big giant rocks. So I deleted a lot of them. But the way the book is set up as not only as a narrative but also as commentary, also as an analysis of or what's the word I'm looking for? That'll do. Analysis. I had to figure out a way to keep interest while making that commentary. And the book I always come back to that I didn't realize I was somewhat emulating was Starship Troopers by Heinlein.
Okay.
He comes out with an absolutely intense action scene.
Right.
And then with the hopes of being able to ride that wave to the climax.
Right.
Because there was so much analysis that needed to be presented in that book. I mean, it's a sci-fi classic at this point, but I kind of realized what he was doing, where it's like you get that really big jolt and then you just kind of wonder what happened. I mean not in a bad way, but and then that carries you through the backstory. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and that's kind of what you did. You just, here we are. It's like, oh my gosh, we're in the middle of this thing, this huge thing, and then you slowly give us information and the little telling things, and you throw something out, like you throw out Transient and then you throw out Eternal, and then it's like, oh, what the hell does all of that mean, and then you slowly tell us what the difference between the two are, and I really enjoy it. I like the storytelling. I like the story. I like.
Well, thank you.
I was kind of puzzled at the ending, but that
might have been somewhat intentional.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think that there's more story there, obviously. So tell us, what did you think, Ben, of the?
Well, the thing that amazed me is the amount of detail that this book has. The world building that you've done here is astonishing. I mean, there is such clarity to this world that this story takes place, the world of Jonas and Anna and Hector and all these people. And it's the world building that I'm really curious about at the moment. In crafting this universe that the story takes place, all the specifics, all the detail, did that come about as a need to fill in gaps as you were writing the story, or were these things that you already had sort of in place and you were crafting the story around it? How did this world with this enormous clarity and detail actually come into existence?
Is that more of the research paper?
Yeah.
Information?
Oh, I can. The best way to describe, or the best way to answer that question comes down to a really simple conundrum that I had to solve, which was, and a lot of this, the recons especially ended up being, most of the recons whenever I wrote the first draft were just part of the story. It was part of that, info dump.
Right.
But I needed it to make sense, because otherwise it just read like a research paper.
Right.
So, but the conundrum that I faced was, okay, we're now dealing with a society of, for all intents and purposes, immortals. If you wake up tomorrow and you and everyone else don't die, how do you organize yourself?
Right.
What are the socio-political ramifications of it? That ended up being something I needed to answer, because if you just throw something in the current climate, it's somewhat believable just because it's familiar. But if you are now immune to death,
how how does that change the world?
How does that change the world? It's like, because I automatically know that something like a capitalistic democracy isn't going to work because sustainability becomes a real problem. And then you start looking at totalitarian regimes, you start looking at socialism and dictatorships, and it's just like, how would this world react to it? Or not react, but like organize itself. And it's something I needed to answer succinctly, otherwise the story was not believable.
Right.
And I experimented several times with that. And that's exactly what happened, hence a lot of the rewrites, because I would go down this hole. It's like, they would never do this. It's like, this makes absolutely zero sense.
Right.
So the more and more I unraveled that, the more and more detailed it got. And it got to the point where, I had to dispense with, hence a lot of the unnecessary detail. Now, I could probably write an appendix that it's longer than the book, but it's just...
it might be interesting to have a backstory of tell another story of how that kind of came about. Obviously,
I've got a whole
story.
bunch of bits and pieces sitting on saved files that I could probably cobble together for an interesting appendix, assuming it would be interesting. But there's a lot of stuff that I needed to get rid of just to push the story forward. But yeah, that ended up being probably the most challenging aspect of the book. It's weird to say that the story was almost secondary to it, but it really was, because the story needs to live and breathe in that believable environment, and it took a long time to figure out what that environment would be.
Right. So the other thing that I found fascinating was the culture, and not just the culture of the Eternals, but that of the Savis as well. And especially revolving around
the Savis are
there's what
Eternals.
Savage Gap.
Well, yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, but actually, I'm thinking more in terms of the humans. And there's one human in particular who intrigued me, only because of some of the commentary that he was offering. That is Hector.
Uh-huh.
There are some things that are being said there which I found to be they had a certain resonance to it. And one of the beautiful things that I love about science fiction in general is that it can really serve as a morality play.
Well, and current social.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at some classic science fiction, especially if you're looking at the visual medium like Star Trek. A lot of their episodes, they would shroud a very important issue in a science fiction packaging, but they were still making a point about a very hot button issue that maybe that was for whatever reason. And there are some references that we get in this book that, some perceptions that some of the humans, especially some of the really single-minded humans, have towards the Eternals. I mean, there is some things there that just almost made me uncomfortable.
Somewhat fanatical.
Yeah, they're
a little fanatical, a little familiar, unfortunately.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, this now. I'm happy. It makes me very happy to have you guys in particular resonate with that, because that was very much intentional. Because having been, and without giving too much away to listeners, having been raised in the South. There is a certain aspect of that personality that I am very familiar with. It was almost normalized in my upbringing. But once you break away from that, you start to see just how dangerous and destructive it is. But
absolutely.
The aspect about this that I really wanted to explore was that whenever you're dealing with these kind of conflicts, whenever you're dealing with cultural differences, whether they're progressive, regressive, doesn't matter. Everyone thinks they are in the right.
Absolutely.
And at what point are you able to massage it in the right direction? Or are you able to salvage someone, or are you at the point of no return? And that's, I don't know if you picked up, that's where a lot of Jonas's dad comes into play, because he's in very much that flux area.
He's very much in a gray area.
Yeah. So he's he's really torn between what he thinks is right for the world and what he thinks is right for a society, or he sees the values in certain things, and then of course you have the single-minded, extremely hatefully focused Hector, who more than anyone in the book serves as the primary antagonist.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, Jonas's dad is in that gray area, and he may not necessarily agree with Hector's points, but he's doing what he has to survive, and that's kind of what people do. They do things that maybe they don't agree with to survive, where the Eternals, that is all out the window. It's really kind of a hedonistic society at that point, to a certain extent. It's just, what is it all about? We're still surviving too, but it sounds like you've done the socialist thing, to use a term that's kind of taken a negative connotation into today, but it truly is a socialistic society. It's like they almost have a guaranteed income, and everybody's, it's.
But one thing I really wanted to do with this story in particular was I wanted to offer commentary without offering preaching. I wanted to give. One thing that really irritates me with a lot of science fiction is a lot of times there will be this infallible utopian regime,
right,
where everything is polished and perfect, and this is the idealistic way to live and everything. It's like, no, I wanted to present a society that was, for lack of a better term, capable and doing well, but there were still flaws. Yeah. It's like everyone is kind of searching for an idealistic way to do this, and there are a lot of them that assume that it is and think that they are, but every one of these systems is going to have flaws. That's why I really wanted to present this story in a gray telling. It's just like there really is no primary flawless character in this story.
Yeah. So it's not utopian, it's not dystopian, it's dystopian.
Dystopian?
Dystopian. I love it. Patent it.
Leave it to me to come up with something screwy.
I don't know. Newstopian kind of word. I don't know.
There we
go. Like, I'll give you an example of the kind of feedback I get. Is every once in a while I'll get someone who is really challenged, especially by the extremist aspects of it. It makes them uncomfortable, but that's because they're part of what makes it extreme.
Right.
And it makes them somewhat question where they're at. It's like, it made me think. It's like, which of course is like crack to an author's ears.
Right. Oh yeah.
But I love that. I love that. Well, I kind of feel you were disrespectful to this, insert the parentheses because I'm a part of it. But it made me think.
Right.
It made me really kind of look at it in a different route. And yeah, that was my intentions.
Yeah, you talked about having grown up with that attitude. I grew up in northeastern Oklahoma, so.
Oh, you know exactly what I'm
I know exactly what you're talking about,
Yeah,
so,
and it really does. It takes breaking away from that.
Absolutely.
To really to really get that perspective. It's like, what's that old Mark Twain quote I really love? Travel is fatal to narrow-mindedness, bigotry, and prejudice, or something around there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because interestingly enough, that my escape or my geographical cure to everything was Albuquerque. So it was that way. That was where I went first. I went to Albuquerque, then to Phoenix, and then I went up to Washington, and now back to Phoenix. So for the last 25 years.
It's huge. I mean,
it's amazing.
That's one of the reasons I really wanted to focus on that hold up Hector kind of mentality, because I want people to be able to reflect that. Yeah. He's never known anything but that. That life, that focus, that trajectory.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, that they send people out into the world, and that's kind of almost a Mormon
missionary kind of thing.
Yeah, but how do they continue to not be part of the world or become part of the world.
In the world, but not of the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a very
and-
Mormon point of view.
So I enjoyed the way you kind of wrapped that up. So, or without giving any spoilers, but tell us about the movie development.
Yeah, I was going to say that was going to be my next question. So
how did this happen?
How did this come about to where?
Wow.
Because when we met at Comic-Con, you told us that this book was now in a development deal.
Yes. So
Hopefully
this
it's not-
was a really wacky right field story.
Yeah.
So,
Hopefully it's not in development hell. So.
oh no. Well, it is. It is where development hell would happen right now, but
Right.
it's progressing. So
Oh, good.
I can't call it hell yet. It's actually in full development. So thank goodness
It's
for
purgatory.
I was going to say
Yes,
development purgatory.
That's right. but I am in that phase. But there's no reason that I'm getting no indication that it's going to linger there. So that's good.
Cool.
But so this came about through a complete happenstance situation, actually from the Albuquerque Comic-Con.
And some of those are some of the best.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So I was doing my booth at the Albuquerque Comic-Con, and this was this year. And of course, everyone's running around. It's the biggest one in the state. So it's a lot of good traction, a lot of moving a lot of books, talking to a lot of readers. It's all good fun. Well, turns out the owner of the Albuquerque Comic-Con and a lot of the subsequent cons like Duke City and Santa Fe is also a local movie producer.
Oh, cool.
And his partner out in LA is a large or a well-known producer who has like Emmys and Oscars to his name. So this was extremely exciting once I learned who they were. So
Right.
because the LA producer had just come up to my booth and started asking me a bunch of poignant questions, very, very specific questions, marketing, comparables, strategy, all that kind of stuff. Now, I had spent a decade in the music industry. I'm completely used to self-promotion. It's very much second nature. So I was able to give him all the answers he wanted, and quick and pertinent and no problem. And I just dismissed it. Well, soon afterwards, him and his partner, who was the local producer, had come up and started asking me more questions, and then asked me straight up, would I be interested in optioning the book for a movie? Now, I completely dismissed this as, okay, whatever. You're the dad of some film student, wanting to do like a little short film or something. He's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And they bought a book, I got their card. They took my information, and then that's when I started to realize, like, holy crap, these guys are players in the industry. I think I just got optioned.
Oh, that's cool.
But now this was all, they hadn't read the book. They just really liked the premise, that it was unique, and it was very much what they're looking for. It turns out they were at the con looking for ideas.
Oh, cool.
So they liked that. Then they actually they even promoted the book at a workshop the next day, saying, this is what we're concentrating on, this is what we're doing.
Oh, that's cool.
Which was really cool. And after a little negotiation, we secured an option, and they ran with it. Now, for anyone who knows anything about options, these are just rent or needs an explanation. Options are basically just rentals,
Right.
or it's permission to write a script and shop it for a potential production.
Yeah, we have a friend who has been in that business, and he's done a lot of things like that. He's perfected scripts, but his name is not on anything. So that's why he decided to start writing himself, because he was the one doing all the work and never got any credit for it.
So, and I'm under no delusion too that this was going to go anywhere, because options, as anyone knows, are almost none of them go anywhere. They're just shopped around. It's almost like fishing for someone to for fishing for producers is all it is.
Right.
And most of them just kind of sit where they are, and they don't go anywhere. And you have your little chunk of cash for the right to shop it around, and then that's it. Nothing happens. So I just went on my merry way thinking, okay, that's cool. At least it gives me something to promote. Hey, someone thought my book
Right.
was cool enough to option. It makes a good little, sign for the booth.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so I was just happy with that. Well, a couple months into it, I start getting word from the producer that Voltage Pictures has, or the script has been written, and Voltage Pictures has decided, yeah, we like this project and we are going to greenlight it for production.
Oh, cool.
So Voltage Pictures, the same company that did Dallas Buyers Club, The Hurt Locker, so they are throwing some serious cred behind this movie. So as soon as I learned that, that's when I kind of had my pause and take it in moment of, holy crap, this might actually happen.
Yeah.
So, and then it kept going further and further, and it keeps stepping along. I keep getting new bits of information. Here's the latest bit of information I can give you. The executive producer is trying to secure one of the Game of Thrones actors for the casting budget.
Oh, cool.
Whoa.
Wow,
Yes.
that would be great.
I don't know who that is yet, but they said as soon as they can get a sign off, I can actually announce that.
Wow.
And that's another one of those bon mots that kind of blew my hair back. It's like, what?
Yeah, once you get that, then you're pretty. It's going to happen. Yeah.
I mean,
Pretty much.
there's a good chance that
still
it
can-
will, but it's a great way to also then do further marketing
Exactly.
to help get further, help the project gain even more traction.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly, and that's precisely how I'm looking at it. It's like that's whenever you came to whenever we met at the Phoenix Comic-Con, you see that sign I have that I can display saying,
Right.
to be a feature film, because it is something that I can promote truthfully.
Yeah, you're not blowing smoke.
and it adds a crap ton of visibility and credibility to the project, and plus it allows me to use that to push or to gain more readership, which is exactly what I was looking at.
Yeah,
Now,
of
I was
course.
under no delusion thinking that this was actually going to come to fruition, but now that they're talking about this kind of stuff,
Right.
I'm I might be steps away from them securing the actual movie rights, which would just blow my mind.
Right. Now
But
that was the
it keeps-
reason that we stopped at your booth. I mean,
Yeah.
the little blurb is in development for a motion
Mhm.
picture or whatever it was that your booth says. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like, oh, cool. Well, maybe we
Yeah.
should stop and talk to this guy. And I'm glad we picked up the books. And then
I'm happy you did too.
Yeah.
But it still blows my mind to be able to say a production company. It's not like some local producer has an option on it. It's like, no,
Right.
Voltage has greenlit it for production. I mean, greenlit it for development.
Right.
That's a really big deal.
Right.
So I'm now I still realize that Hollywood being Hollywood, the rug can be yanked out
Oh.
at any given time. So
What rug?
I'm going to
What
be
rug?
fine if nothing happens. But in the meantime, I am promoting the crap out of it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Just on a side note, thanks for telling us about Carrie Merrill that was just catty corner from you. We stopped and talked to her for just a second. I communicated with her via email, and then I picked up her book and read her first book. And it was really fascinating. So thanks for
Sure.
telling us about
Of
her.
course.
So, and I want to say, now Ben hasn't read Max in the Universe.
Not yet.
Or the Multiverse.
That's,
Oh
I think, my next book.
God, what? Wow. I can't say enough about that. It truly, I mean, you dedicated it to Douglas Adams. I thought I was reading a Douglas Adams book.
Oh, thank
Really.
you very much. You have no idea how much that means to me.
Well,
It's,
I would
It
be.
was just the funnest thing. It was just a delightful romp.
There were times, sometimes I work from home, and I'd be here in our office, and Keith would be in the living room reading, and he was reading Max, and he would just burst out laughing. And I know it was because
Nice.
it was from the book.
Right. And what was it?
Oh, good.
I titled my review "Hitchhiker's Guide to the Multiverse."
Yes. And thank you very much for that. Those are reviews are infinitely valuable for authors, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Yeah, and thanks for the kind words you said about me doing that. But I'm not a writer, and I always say that, but I can turn out something reasonable on occasion. It just,
Sure.
I don't do it enough. Ben is the writer of the two of us. But that was really a great book. I enjoyed it. It was
Thank you.
a complete departure from anything else that I was reading at the moment. It was just one of those fun, just no thinking about anything.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to think. You just enjoy the ride.
So let's talk about that.
Cool.
What was the genesis
Yeah.
for that story? and something else that I'm really curious about, especially when I talk to writers who have written outside of a particular franchise. I mean, you've got Transient, you've got Max, two entirely separate books, and I'm really curious about
completely diametrically opposed books too.
Well, but
So-
I'm also intrigued with the writing style approach in terms of the mechanics.
Sure. Now, Transient, I never set out to be my writing style. It just so happened to be the idea I was working on. Through many rewrites and many edits and many years, I started to develop somewhat of a voice. But I never really set out to be like Here's a fun little side tidbit. The first several drafts of Transient was actually adult sci-fi. It used to be all of the characters were in their 30s and 40s, but for a long from after a couple of feedback and a little more analysis, I realized that for the particular story, the protagonists and a lot of the main characters worked better as teens and 20s, as because it added a certain amount of fallibility to them,
right.
because they didn't have a whole lot of life experience. They were in
Yes.
certain situations that they were expected to be able to conquer, and they didn't. And there wasn't a believability to what the characters were doing, which completely corrected itself as they were younger.
Jonas, I think, had he been older, there might have been a certain jaundiced emotional approach
Yes.
to his particular character, but by putting him at the age that he is in the book, there is a greater sense. There's more honesty.
Yes,
in
exactly.
everything
Perfect
that is
way to put it.
about him, and that's what I loved about putting him at that age.
Yes, and that was you absolutely nailed it. It gives him a sense of honesty and I'm blanking on the word. Anyway, yeah, you absolutely hit it.
Yeah.
Now from Max, I fully intended Max to be my debut novel. And specifically because I adore Douglas Adams. And he's been my favorite author since I was a kid. And
of
I
course you've probably
celebrate
seen-
his entire catalog. He remains the only author that has ever made me laugh out loud while reading. It's like I'm really very muted when it comes to I'm the kind of guy that'll watch a comedy and not laugh, but I think it's funny.
So
Same here.
I assume
That
you've
kind-
seen every Doctor Who episode that he was scriptwriter for.
Yes. Oh yes.
It's some of our
Yeah.
favorite episodes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, the dude just has an
Pirate Planet is it's right up there with.
Yep. Oh my goodness. Like
By the
Douglas
moons
had
of
an
the-
unapologetic wit that could make you laugh from the first sentence.
Oh,
I
yeah.
still remember the first time I read what was it? Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul, which is number 2, Dirk Gently. And the first sentence I just cackled. It's like, you got to be kidding me. It's like that this guy is an absolute master.
Yeah.
And so, but the only problem was he was an island unto himself.
Oh yeah.
It's like, aside from Douglas Adams, most people cannot name another science fiction comedy author. And I wanted more of that. And I decided, well, I'm going to write it. So
Well, I think you did a great job. It was.
thank you very much. And the whole concept of Max came about with this idea I had where I love the concept of the multiverse. It's like one of my little nerd heavens to think about.
Yeah.
But
Us too.
whenever you see, go ahead.
I say us too.
Us too. Yeah.
Nice.
Well,
Oh, that's what I like
even-
to hear. So much
even
fun to
from
think about.
even from a scientific standpoint, if you're really into theoretical astrophysics, the idea of the multiverse is a fascinating one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. It's like I've been kind of an astrophysics nut for as long as I can remember. And the thing that really irks me about, or I shouldn't say irk, just a little disappointment I have when it comes to multiverse tales, is there's always a mission behind it. There's always a reason to go through it. You got to go save a society. You got to go retrieve something. You got to go. There's always a reason to engage with it. And it's just like, okay, well, what if there wasn't?
Right. What if it just happens?
Yeah, what if it just happens to somebody? I mean, and someone doesn't want to surf the multiverse, they just have to.
Yeah.
And once I started playing that out and started thinking about all the different scenarios and everything, the comedy wrote itself. It was just so much fun to think up wacky things just to throw a bumbling, unwilling protagonist into.
Yeah.
And I'd basically written the first 4 chapters as completely disjointed. It's just throwing someone into a weird situation and seeing what happens. And then I started to string everything together, and I tore through that. I had so much fun writing it that I immediately launched into the sequel. I'm about halfway through Max Part 2.
Oh, wow.
It is so much fun to write.
I would be very interested in reading that once it when you get close to publication, let us know, and we'll do another interview with you.
So
that.
I'm so happy you loved it.
It was. I could not put it down. I could not. I blew through it in just like no time.
So when writing Max of the Multiverse, it sounds like that this is just literally, coming out of your brain through your hands into your keyboard or whatever means it is that you're writing. That it's just like almost like you're taking dictation.
Yes. No, I don't use dictation, but
no, but that's not what I mean. But
it's very much that process.
Yeah, that's what I meant. You're not actual dictation, but how it's almost like someone is telling it to you, and you're just typing it out.
Yeah, very much so. It's like Max really flowed. Transient, I had to really outline to a certain extent to get everything correct and make sure everything called back to everything else appropriately, make sure all the timelines matched, make sure all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot more mental process. Max, I just ran with. I refused to outline any part of the Max story because I think it would do a disservice to it.
Right.
It needs to be just a random mess, just a
it was
bumbling
a great
adventure.
Random mess. I mean, there were certain. The story was going somewhere. You knew that, but
yeah.
As far as it appears that you didn't actually know exactly where it was going. It just kind of happened.
That was
it was going somewhere, and then it just happened.
And that's sort of what's going to be the next question, which I kind of already guessed at, and that is, you were just kind of riding by the seat of your pants.
Very much so. Yeah. At any given point, whenever I was writing a chapter with Max, I had zero idea where it was going.
Oh, wow.
Just, isn't this an interesting idea? And I explored it, and then it took me to this weird planet, and then it's like, oh, what if this happens? And it just took me to another rabbit hole, and the story was complete seat of my pants. Yeah,
well,
it had no structure whatsoever, and I think it's actually a better story for it.
Yeah,
and part 2 is exactly like this.
Oh, cool.
Right now, I'm to a point where I have zero idea where it's going.
Oh, that's
but
cool.
it's soldiering along because I write one aspect and it opens up a next one.
Yeah. So that's the interesting part about the multiverse is he wakes up in this aspect of the multiverse, and so it's a whole story in itself. It's little mini vignettes, if you will, of a larger story.
Have you ever, at any point while writing, got to a point where you took a step back and first wondered where the heck did that come from, or then maybe take another look and think, I don't know if I like that or not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Max, Transient, I did that all the time, but Max, I did I definitely put myself into a couple of cul-de-sacs I needed to back out of because sometimes it got too ludicrous where it didn't even make sense to the story. While it was fun to write and fun to flesh out the details of this insanity, it just didn't push the story forward. Now, luckily, I never got to a point where I had to delete an entire chapter or I had to rewrite a trajectory. One thing I will say is, you know how the 4 main characters all meet in the middle?
Right.
It's kind of a dual narrative until everything becomes a driving single narrative.
Right.
In the original draft, the Zoe and Para did not even appear until halfway through the book.
Oh, wow.
It's like when they met them, that's when you met them too. And I realized that just didn't make sense. And there was so much fun with this character, or with this pair of characters. I really wanted to explore how they got to that predicament.
Right.
So I backtracked. I ended up chunking a lot of the story out. I didn't delete Max's trajectory. I just added Zoe and Paris' trajectory.
Oh, cool.
And it ended up becoming that dual narrative.
So you gave a little backstory of how they got there, and then moved forward.
Exactly. So so while I didn't chunk out anything or delete anything, I just added in a backwards direction.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So we have an author friend whose characters actually, I mean, she says they speak to her, and she's kind of taking dictation. Do the characters speak to you? And if you take them in a wrong direction, do they tell you, no, that's not where we need to go? Or
to an extent, I have a pretty good idea of how everyone acts. I hear the dialogue pretty succinctly in my head. I don't really have to manipulate it much. A good example is back in Transient. The original inspiration for Doran was Vince Vaughn. Like his character is Vince through and through, specifically like dodgeball Vince Vaughn. And because he has that kind of extremely sharp, snarky, but likable, like a kind of prick quality to him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So to this day, even though he's kind of like a younger visual for the story, I still hear Vince Vaughn in my head when I'm writing his dialogue.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's that kind of thing. Is like I do hear them, but they don't direct it so much as I want to take the story, or more than I want to take it to a specific place.
Right.
But if they're in a specific situation where their dialogue doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, that's a clue where I'm going in the wrong direction.
Right.
It's like as long as they react accordingly and are believable in any given chunk of the story, then yeah, I think they let me know when it's not going well.
Oh, that's cool. So when is Max 2? You said you're about halfway through. When do you suspect that? The end of the year, middle of next year?
At this point, I honestly couldn't. I'm shooting by the end of the year.
Okay, cool.
But what has been, and I don't want to call it unfortunate, but an unexpected twist is because Transient has gotten the legs that I never thought it would. I am spending equal amounts of time writing the sequel to it.
Oh, wow.
So this was going to be
good.
yet my next question.
Yes.
And that is, okay, so you're writing a sequel to Transient. You're writing a sequel to Max in the Multiverse.
Mhm.
Obviously, two entirely different tones,
Yes.
not just in terms of just the story, but in terms of, I would imagine, the verbiage, just the mechanics
Well,
of the
and
writing.
universe and everything.
Well, but
Yeah, I mean,
it's the
completely.
mechanics, the grammar.
Right.
Of the writing. So how jarring must it be to jump back and forth from one book to the other?
It's very jarring, to the point where I can't do them in a single day.
Oh, I'm sure.
What ends up happening is my mood will dictate which one I work on. It's like if I'm in a really good mood, or something fun is happening, or I'm there's not a whole lot on my plate, I'll just jump into Max because that's just fun.
Right.
And I'll just tromp along, and it gets to the point where I'll get to a good stopping point with Max, and I can't just pick up Transient. I'll have to take maybe a day between them to even get back into that mindset.
Right.
Because Transient takes a lot of thought to put word to paper. Max is a lot more gallopy and fun, while Transient I need to satisfy certain aspects of lore and timelines and scientific accuracies and all that kind of stuff. So it's very much a much more thought out process with Transient. But if I'm in that mindset, I can run with it. But it takes me a while to get to it.
And then you've got all the cons that you're going to and trying to market the books and doing this and that and the other, and as well as your regular job.
Exactly. So a lot of things are taking priority right now. It's like I'm not in that getting to the publication process or getting to the publication finish line, and I can completely concentrate on one given piece, not get interrupted or anything like that. But I mean, it's I don't mind that I'm doing the cons and doing promotions and have my day job and all that kind of stuff. It just cuts into the protected writing time.
Yeah, we have discovered that since we started doing this show, it's been 3 years now, and our vacations now are surrounding cons, and all of our all of our time off is taken up with cons and film festivals and this and that and the other, and that.
They're like working vacations.
Yeah. So I mean, actually, this year we're actually going to go on a cruise, but that's been planned for 2 years. So
yeah, the first actual vacation where we're not working.
Yeah, that we've had in 2 years. So it's kind of.
My wife is a physician. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So if people want to know more about your books, I assume they're available through like Amazon.
They're on Amazon, and then where else can they find your books? Which is the best avenue for you?
What's the most lucrative avenue for you to get for people to buy your books?
That.
Yeah, I didn't want to spell it out, but yeah, what's the way that's the best bang for the buck for you?
I would say if you're a Kindle reader, that's the best bang for your buck. They're both on Kindle. And if you prefer a physical book, they're both on Amazon. Because I went through the CreateSpace platform, which is the Amazon publication platform, it is exclusive to those two avenues, unless they're in like a local bookstore or something like that. But you're not going to find them in Barnes & Noble. I'm not quite that big yet. So
and there's
maybe one day, but right now it's Amazon.
What is it? Goodreads? Is that?
Goodreads is kind of like the Facebook for authors and readers. So. But all those link to Amazon anyway. Oh, cool. So if you go to Goodreads looking for it, it'll just point you to Amazon.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that we picked up the hard copies.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thrilled you did too, and I'm so happy you guys stopped by the booth. It was a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Yeah. So tell us more about where you can be found.
Any presence in social media, be it Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever.
Are you on the Twitter and the Facebook?
Oh yeah, I stick to the classics. I'm Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And it's all Zachry Wheeler as the handle.
What? No MySpace?
No
MySpace.
Oh wow!
Dang.
Although I do have a funny story about MySpace.
Oh,
so,
you have your band's on MySpace.
Yes, my band is still on MySpace because if you're manning a booth, you want to have some freebies for people. Yeah. Well, because I spent a decade in the music industry, I had a whole bunch of CDs that are just left over, taking up space in the closet. So it's like, oh, what a great thing to give away. So I'd have them on the booth. I think you guys might have gotten some.
Yeah, we got two.
On my promotional CD for the Maymatic, it still has my MySpace address, and I get so many comments about that. It's like, MySpace, really?
Yeah.
It's like yes, that shows you how old those CDs are, and the fact that I'm actually giving you a CD. So
yeah, exactly. Instead of
no MP3s
to an MP3. Yeah.
But at this point, I am totally out of them. I have given them all away.
Oh, cool.
So now I'm giving away book postcards and stuff like that.
Cool.
Oh, so the CD's now a collector's item.
They are a collector's item. They are worth an entire $1. So yes.
in recycle.
In recycle, that's right.
And just so everybody knows, it's Zachry, Zachry Wheeler. So there's no A in there. So
.com.
And you can find him at ZachryWheeler.com. You have a Facebook page for Zachry Wheeler author. And then what's your Twitter?
Is also Zachry Wheeler. Everything is Zachry Wheeler.
Okay, cool.
And a fun little tidbit about that name. For the last 39 years of my life, I have gone by the name Zach Wheeler. Do you know who also shares the name Zach Wheeler?
The name?
A starting pitcher for the New York Mets.
Okay.
So the reason I go by Zachry Wheeler, my full name, which, by the way, I was named after an Atlanta department store, a whole nother story. If you look for Zach Wheeler, the author, I don't exist on the internet because the first 10 pages of Google are about, baseball stats. So,
right.
So hence my going by my full spelling of my first name, Zachry.
That's cool. All right. Well, this was a really great conversation. We appreciate you coming on the show, and thank you for being with us this time.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Hi, this is Ginny Koch, author of the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series from Daw Books, part of Penguin Random House, and you're listening to Two Gay Geeks.
And here's a few selected birthdays for July 10th through July 16th, 2017. On July 10th, we have Arlo Guthrie, and what was that? You can get anything you can at
Alice's Cantina.
What?
No, a food service, fast food joint. No,
Restaurant. There we go. Anything you want at Alice's Restaurant. Also on July 10th, we have John Sim, Max von Sydow, Fred Gwynn, and James Whistler. Where's his mother at?
Sitting in a chair.
Yes. July 11th, Yul Brenner, Giorgio Armani, and Mr. Tab Hunter.
Oh, that means we have to watch Damn Yankees now.
Yeah, we do. July 12th, Richard Simmons, the Queen of
Exercise.
Exercise. Also, Christine McVie, John
Petrucci,
and John Wetton, as well as George Eastman was born in 1854, and
it's of Eastman Kodak, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And he has there's a museum in Rochester, New York that I never got a chance to go to. Just spending with the customer up there just didn't work out. Also, on July the 12th is Josiah Wedgwood, 1730 of Wedgwood, China. And Jeremy Kyle of Casual Mode. July 13th, Richard Marin.
As in Cheech of Cheech and Chong.
Yes. Sir Patrick Stewart, Mr. Colton Haynes, Harrison Ford, Erno Rubik, and
some guy named Philip Raggington. Is
Ben.
that me?
Oh, Ben.
Me.
Ben Raggington. There we go.
Me.
Yes,
I knew that I shared a birth date with Harrison and Sir Patrick Stewart. I didn't know that I shared a birth date with Colton Haynes as well. Holy cow.
And Mr. Erno Rubik of Rubik's Cube.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I know that right now there's this big push about people who are celebrities who are born in July because I see that on Facebook all the time now. About people who are born in July are supposed to be awesome. Right?
Oh yeah.
I just wish I looked as beautiful as Colton Haynes.
Yeah. July 14th, Harry Dean Stanton, Ingmar Bergman, the director, Mr. Woody Guthrie.
Oh no,
Arlo's
kidding.
father, and William Hanna. July 15th, Forrest Whitaker, Jesse Ventura, and Rembrandt, or Harmansson van Rijn, born in 1606. July 16th, Mr. Orville Redenbacher and Barnard Hughes. Dumont!
That
Barnard
Barnard Hughes, yes.
And Miss Ginger Rogers. And that's it for the birthdays this time.
Technorama, the podcast for geeks, because geeks are better than cool. You don't hear someone say, "Get away from me, you cool person." Who's gonna have their 65-inch home theater system installed by the Cool Squad?
Not me!
That's for sure. How much cool cred do you have? Not enough to care about. Think you'll find any canned unicorn meat at thinkcool.com? It's just a part domain name. They don't even have roadkill in a paper cup. That's why you need to start listening to Technorama, because that's what geeks do. Go to chuckchat.com and listen to Technorama before you turn cool.
Go give a listen to our friends Chuck and Craig over at Technorama, and occasionally us when we've hijacked the show.
Although I was remembering how the last time we did that bumper in Technorama, Craig couldn't. Chuck could not even remember the lines, and he says, listen to Technorama before you turn, because that's what cool people do. It's like, no,
that's not the right words. Anyway, now it's time for our wonderful listener feedback. We always like it whenever you give us your feedback.
And boy, did we get some hot ones this time.
Yeah, we actually, this time we have some really cool, interesting news to share with you. We now have a 5-star rating on iTunes because we had enough people that rated us on iTunes and gave us some reviews.
Yes, so starting in chronological order, we first got actually our first 5-star review. I didn't know this was last year.
Yeah.
June 13th of last year from JockNerd234. He simply wrote, "Love the focus on content creators."
Yay.
Yeah, well, we're happy that you'll like that too. And then moving forward to April of this year, my friend Corey Nelson.
Who's that?
She wrote, somebody, only my oldest friend from school. I've known her since 4th grade.
Oh, my.
She wrote, "Love the variety." Their motto is, their motto is try. I'm going to read it exactly how she wrote it. The motto is try. They talk about many different subjects from TV/film to cons to opera. Good interviews and also their guests good time to be talk. Okay.
They have plenty of time to talk.
Right.
I think that's
what she meant.
Yeah. She's probably typing it on her phone.
She probably is. Enjoy the humor and genuine curiosity about many subjects.
Yeah, we'll talk about anything.
Now, this one made me
This one. What did you say? I can't hear you.
Digging the old guard. This is by somebody named Noby. Actually, he then says, "Does that mean to say, well, get off my damn kids, you front lawn?" Anyway, he says, "Does that mean to say, I hope not. I enjoy how the hosts are older than most of the other geek podcasters. I listen to those being in early mid-30s and can discuss things with a lot more geeky experience to call upon. Keep up the good work."
Well, we have lots of experience with the geeky and nerdy
well,
stuff.
I'll try after I have my X-Lax in the morning.
The Metamucil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes. Anyway, thank
much.
you for all that. That's awesome. So this now gives us the ratings that we want for iTunes. So maybe
Yeah,
that'll
so
actually help.
Continue to rate us and review us. That would be wonderful.
Yes, we like that a lot.
Yes.
So now moving right along, this was a comment that was left on our website a couple of weeks ago. And this is about, it's amazing how sometimes the old stories come back. And this was written over a year ago. And it's about how Warner Brothers had optioned the Dragon Riders of Pern and had already selected writers for the project. And we got a comment from Baba Job. And he says, "I think Sarah Cornwell looks as I imagine Lessa looks, with that faint aristocratic look and pale skin and dark hair." Thank you, Bob. And then finally, last few bits of comments from our previous episode, TG Geeks episode 124. And we got a comment from one of our favorite listeners, that being Arkle. And he writes, "You mentioned Cocteau." Now, that's Jean Cocteau, the French filmmaker. He says, "You mentioned Cocteau in the birthday segment, and it's impossible for me to hear that name without thinking of the song from the Brows Held High / Some Jerk with a Camera crossover review, where they compared and contrast his Beauty and the Beast adaptation with the animated Disney one. Each song in the review is a parody of one of the songs from the Disney version, and the song Cocteau is a parody of the song Gaston. No one plots like Cocteau, frames his shots like Cocteau, makes his passions your everyday thoughts like Cocteau." Yeah. Arkle goes on saying, "Don't worry, not going to post the whole thing, and I'm certainly not going to sing it either. To quote a famous TV robot, I'm not allowed to sing. It's a court order."
Aha.
And then we got a comment from Alicia CCTX on our YouTube page. And this is in regards to the great surprise that we got about Sense8 coming back for a finale.
Yeah.
And she writes, "Netflix says finale, we say special. If we have enough legal viewers watching Netflix," an emphasis on the word legal, that means don't pirate it. "If we have enough legal viewers watching on Netflix the day the special airs, they will beg the cast and crew for a season 3. As Lana says, You never know. And also at the 2154 mark, you say Nigeria.
Oh, yeah, I screwed that up.
Well,
Sorry.
they filmed in Nairobi, Kenya.
Yep.
Oh, you can follow the fight to bring back Sense8 on Twitter by following at global_cluster and at I Am We Campaign and at S8 Daily. That's S, the number 8 Daily. So there you are with that. And I think she's right. When the finale or the special does air, the day that it drops, we all need to watch it. That same day. I think that it might make Netflix people wake up.
Yeah.
And then we got a comment from Missy Gunnels Catano because we had talked about our experience at WesterCon. And
it was her birthday as
It was
well.
her birthday, that's right. And she says, thank you guys, love y'all. And then finally, we got a comment from our favorite authoress, Jeannie Koch, and she says, always a blast hanging with you guys. And that is our feedback for the week.
Yeah, we want to hear from you, our listeners. Your feedback is important to us, whether it's on our articles, on our episodes, or anything that we publish, our YouTube episodes. Please, we would like to hear your feedback. If you want to say something, you like something, you don't like something, you found something interesting, you want to correct us, as we were corrected. I screwed up on that should have been Nairobi. But please leave us feedback. We want to hear from you, and we will share it with our listeners unless you don't want us to. We can share the comment, but we don't have to share your name.
We can keep you anonymous if you wish, yeah.
If you want. And you can do that on our Facebook page, or you can go to TG Geeks Webcast at tggeeks.com on episodes and articles. You can do YouTube episodes, or you can comment on, let's see, wherever else.
Well, let's say,
places.
I remember one time Chuck, Mr. Technorama Tomasi, actually left us voice feedback through Facebook.
Yeah. So you can do that through Facebook. You can also call our listener feedback line. And by the way, that is a Skype line. And since Skype does not allow you to do a personal greeting anymore, don't be alarmed whenever you get this computer voice saying, leave a message. But you can do that, and we'll play that comment on air if you want. 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357.
You don't need to hear their identification. They're the Two Gay Geeks. They can go about their business. Move along.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Wow. Yes, we saw that last night. Or as of when we're recording this.
Yeah,
we saw it Friday night, opening night. And I have a review that you can find on our website. We will have the link for that review in our show notes at tggeeks.com. Yeah. But yes, we saw Spider-Man Homecoming.
It is your friendly neighborhood superhero movie.
Well, it is.
It is. It really is. I loved it. I thought the way it started, the way it ended, everything about it was good.
Okay, so that makes it really hard for me to ask, what were some of the things that you liked?
Everything.
Oh, dear. Well,
That's
thank
a quick
you.
conversation.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you for listening to us. I mean, was there anything that really stood out that at any moment that made you just say, this is awesome?
I loved the way they let Tom Holland play Peter Parker as a teenager, because it was so true to teenagers today. I mean, they're doing everything with their iPhone. I'm not going to spoil anything by saying that they kind of open it up with him doing a little montage of, I'm doing this now and I'm doing that now, kind of selfie videos, if you will. So it really is him being a teenager and how he has to learn to be Spider-Man. So I enjoyed that part of it.
It's something that I also very much enjoyed. The tone of this movie is, I mean, even though there are some very serious moments here and there, the tone is very light. It's not it doesn't have a lot of emotional gravitas.
Yeah, and we don't have
throughout the film.
We don't have to relitigate Uncle Ben's murder.
No, we don't have to revisit that whatsoever. So right now we have a very happy-go-lucky Peter Parker, because for lack of a better term, I mean, we were introduced to him in Civil War, so
Right.
naturally this movie takes place right on the heels of Captain America: Civil War. So you can kind of imagine, and I'm not giving anything away, but you can kind of imagine. Well, how would you be feeling if you just got to take place in a really awesome Avengers fight?
Yeah,
You know, and
he's
now-
riding a high.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where Peter is now, and
He's
now
10 feet tall and bulletproof.
exactly. So
Literally.
now, yeah. So now we get to follow his journey at this point, and now he needs two lives. He's superhero, and he is teenager, and now he's got to do something that he's never had to do before. Now he has to try to find a way to integrate these two halves of himself and become one person.
Right.
And it's a fascinating character study, and yet at the same time, the movie it's for the most part it's pretty light, and yet they're able to bring in and again, no spoilers, because if you've seen the trailers, then it's a no-brainer. Yeah, Tony Stark is in this movie.
Yep.
We see him, and it felt organic. It felt so natural. I didn't feel like I was watching. Ooh, look at that cool cameo. I didn't get any of that. I kept feeling, yeah, he would show up at this time.
Right.
So the universe building that we got in this movie was stupendous.
Yeah.
It was just so enjoyable. And at the same time, there's just so amazing gags in this.
Oh yeah, there's some really really great stuff. It's great. Somebody did make some mention I saw on Twitter about some of the stunts and some of the things, and there was a few little missteps in some of that, but
yeah,
there were-
and I observed them at the moment that they happened,
Yeah,
but
and-
by the time the movie ends, I
Yeah.
didn't care.
yeah, because the movie by itself and what happens and the performances are all great, so it's just a great movie all the way around.
What do you think of Tom Holland's acting?
Oh, it was great. I thought he did a great job of being the teenager
Mhm.
that Peter Parker is.
Is there any character? Well, okay. Well, let me jump to this then. We have Michael Keaton as the antagonist, and Michael Keaton, probably in superhero film, is best known for being Batman. But what did you take away from his portrayal as the Heavy? And is Toombs, his character, is Vulture? Is he an interesting adversary?
Oh my gosh, yes. As you said in your article, he's not a bad person, and as Kevin Feige says, he's not a bad person. He's just self-serving and misguided. So it makes him far more interesting than a sociopath.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of Michael Keaton's acting in general?
I thought it was great. He did a really good job. I think something totally different for him
Mhm.
than some of his other characters. So it was good.
Were there any performances that you would have maybe liked to have seen more of, or thought maybe the movie needed? Any criticisms? We talked about some of the visuals, okay, but are there any artistic directions or missteps that you think, maybe the movie would have been better if they had done this as opposed to that?
Well, I think May is certainly a lesser character, but she should have had a little bit more than what she had. Maybe they should do a one shot. Maybe they should bring the one shots back for
Do a
Life of
one shot with
May.
Aunt May.
Aunt May, yeah.
Yeah, because Marissa Tomei is a really good actress,
Yeah.
and I will admit I was a little put off when it was announced that she was going to be Aunt May, but when we saw her in Civil War, her short bit on screen won me over.
Yeah, she had more time in Civil War than she had in this movie, practically.
Well, pretty much. Although there were some good moments, she did have some very,
Yeah.
very good moments in this film.
Yeah,
I really, really love this movie.
yeah, and I kind of liked the cameo of Captain America doing the
PSAs.
Yeah, so I won't say anything more.
Won't
about
say
that.
anything more, but we
This
must
is
emphasize
a superhero movie, and this is a Marvel,
Marvel
movie.
superhero movie.
Stay until
the house lights come up.
Exactly.
You have to stay until stay until until they kick you out of the theater.
Yeah, until they come in and start sweeping around you.
Right. then leave. Because we got to the theater kind of early last night, and why is it? Why after all these years, people are still leaving before the credits are over?
Yeah. What's up with that?
Seriously? You don't know by now that there's going to be something more to deliver, and it's not just Marvel. I mean, so many other movies are now adding these little tags in there. It's now become expected.
Pixar films, my gosh,
I mean, well, we see it in Pixar films. I mean, Disney's doing it. They did with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. You just don't leave anymore.
And I'll just say this. Even if there was not a stinger, we would have stayed
You would stay for the credits.
Because one of the things about the credits is they list everybody that was involved with the film, and it is I won't say out of duty, but out of respect for the people that made the film. I sit through the credits while I may not read every
you can't pick up every name, no.
But it's out of respect for the filmmakers.
Right, for everybody who really put a lot of effort into this, and not to change the subject too much, but like the other night we watched Hugo.
Yeah. Oh my.
And
gosh.
there's a fabulous line that Georges Méliès says when he's talking to his colleagues, and when he addresses them as wizards, as artists, makers of magic, makers of fantasy, storytellers. Everybody that has their name in these credits they're a part of that.
Yep.
They not sacrifice, but they all put forth whatever energy was required of them to give you a sense of diversion away from the real world, whatever's going on. They gave you entertainment.
Yep.
So, out of respect, stick around, even if there isn't any kind of a stinger.
Yeah.
But still, we saw people leaving, and I kept thinking,
the minute the credits started,
the moment the credits started, they're walking out, and I felt like saying, "Do you not know?"
Right.
And how many times have we actually sat in the theater and we started to see people leave, and we're like, "No, don't go yet."
How many times have we been the last people in the theater?
Well, yeah, we have been, but there have been a number of people that have started to leave, and we say, "Don't you know there's more?" "Oh, there's more?" "Yes, sit, please, watch. There's more to watch here. There's more to see." Now, luckily, I think we had a decent amount of people who stuck around all the way to the end.
Yeah.
So that was kind of nice. I guess people are finally catching on. But yes, stick around all the way to the end because there's a very important announcement that you have to hear.
Yes.
But the movie is wonderful. Tom Holland is fantastic. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with his character, not just in Infinity War, but in his own movies later on.
Yeah.
And I think Tom Holland has got a really bright career. I just hope that he doesn't injure himself with a lot of his athletics.
Right.
Because he does a lot of his own stunts.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's very athletic. I mean, there's the story about how when he was auditioning for the part, he was just simply told, "Okay, can you take a stance?" Of Peter Parker planning, he just does his little, Spider-Man does his little move and he plants it on the ground. And Tom says, "Oh, you mean like this?" And he does his backflip, whatever, and he plants it. And I think the filmmaker's like, "Okay, the part's yours."
Exactly.
So yes, but go check it out. I would say that out of all the Spider-Man movies I've ever seen, and there's only 5 of them so far, 5 or 6, this is the best one.
Yeah.
This was my
It
favorite.
was a good Spider-Man film.
Yeah.
And as always, we have follow-up items. Thank you to whoever it was that nominated us for the Parsec Award. We're in the waiting mode now. The judging is happening, and we thank you for that nomination. Check out our calendar on the website. If you have a birthday or an event or a con, film festival, whatnot, send us a note, and we'll be glad to put it out there. Come see us and say hi. We're going to be at several different events coming up in the next several months. We're going to be actually at San Diego Comic-Con for the con and for the panel on Thursday, July 20th at 1 p.m. at the library. I get to be on a panel. That's the only reason
I'm
that we could
hoping
go.
that I will too.
Yeah, hopefully.
We can share a mic.
There we go. We may switch in the middle. Or
Well, maybe, but hey, I got a great idea. If there's only so many mics, we can share a mic.
Yep. Also, and we'll be around the con. So.
Oh yeah.
Just stay in touch. We're going to be at Horrible Imaginings Film Festival in San Diego again on Saturday, September 9th, and OperaCon by Arizona Opera, October 21st, and Phoenix Comic-Con Fan Fest in November 11th and 12th. So come see us and say hi. We'll be there. As everybody knows, we are huge supporters of independent creators, whether it's filmmakers, comic book artists, writers, etc. We have found that there is a tremendous amount of talent out there that don't get the big money and fame. So if you hear about somebody doing a crowdfunding campaign, please consider supporting it. You never know, you can be involved for as little as $1 sometimes. You might be part of something big. Consider independent creators. And Phoenix Comic-Con Fan Fest, as I said, returns to Phoenix on November 11th and 12th. More info soon at phoenixcomiccon.com. phoenixcomiccon.com.
Yeah.
And also Phoenix Comic-Con next year is May 24th through the 27th, 2018. OperaCon, as I said earlier, by Arizona Opera, coming up October 21st. We're going to be in the planning of that here soon, or helping with the planning in little ways that we can. Going to be several events planned around the performance of Hercules versus the Vampire, so stay tuned for more. You can check out Arizona Opera at azopera.org.
Special shout out to the Doctor Who Talking Who on Twitter. They published the Doctor Who Fancast Guide and they republish our stories on their Fancast Guide. That's why we'd like to give them a shout out. You can find them on Twitter. The handle is @TalkingWho. And earlier in this episode, you heard some feedback from Arkle. He posts the Arkle Times Post-Dispatch News that also republishes many of our stories. You can find that by finding him on Twitter. He is known as the Nazi Punching Skull, and his Twitter handle is @Arkle, A-R-K-L-E. And he's also on Tumblr. He is the keeper of the incorrect Star Trek Voyager quotes. So if you want to have a nice little laugh, you can go check out the Voyager quotes. We will have the link for that in our show notes. Also, special thanks to Sci-Fi Obsession on Facebook for republishing our stories. They can be found at facebook.com/sci-fi-ob. That is SCIFIOB.
And we want to give a shout out to the Lookie Show, the twins. They give us lots of love on Twitter, and they have a great show on YouTube. It's the Lookie Show. They do really great interviews of movies.
Interviews?
Not interviews, but reviews of movies. Sorry.
I'd love to see them interview a movie.
They're going to interview the movie.
You know,
it's not out of the realm of possibility with those two.
If anybody could interview a film, it would be those two.
Yes. And they do it in a rather unique way. So check out the Lookie Show on YouTube.
Another shout out to the Facebook group, The Gay Geek, because it's an awesome group with awesome people and awesome content. Yes, I know. I say that week after week, but the only reason I do it is because it's true. It's true. It's true. And they allow us to publish our episodes there as well. And so, of course, we have to give a special thanks to the moderator, Jeremiah Reeves, for giving us his blessing in letting us share episodes there. So you can find them by going to Facebook. The URL is facebook.com/groups/thegaygeek.
Thanks, Jeremiah. And we want to remind you to occasionally click on our Amazon ads. We have a special one that you can try Amazon Prime for free for 30 days, just right in time for Amazon Prime Day, which is on the 10th. So check out that widget on the side of our website.
That's the day this episode gets released.
Yeah, and we get a little kickback. So, and lastly, but not leastly, please rate us and review us on iTunes.
Yes, because we really loved the reviews that we got this time.
Yes, thank you so much. And coming up on the show, maybe next week, but I'm not sure. We are actually in the process of getting ready to interview Beth Cato, who is a local to Phoenix author, and we'll have her interview sometime soon. It depends on when she wants that released. It's in conjunction with a new book that she's releasing. So
maybe next week if she's okay with that. But at the we're not quite sure when that'll come out.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, that should do it for this episode of TG Geeks Webcast. Be sure to check out the article for this webcast episode. We're going to have several links on the page of things we talked about. And remember, you can comment on our Facebook page or our website, tggeeks.com. Or you can leave us a voicemail at 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. From TG Squared Studios, I am Keith Lane. Thanks for listening. I bid you peace.
Cheers.